Okay, this week's portion is the portion of Bo. So the Torah starts off like this. Hashem appears to Moses and tells him, Bo el Paro, go to Pharaoh. But the truth is that the word Bo el Paro really means come to Pharaoh. It should have really said Lech el Paro, which in Hebrew means go to Pharaoh. Why does it say come to Pharaoh? So there's many different commentaries, but let's read a little bit what the Zohar says. Maksiv Bo el Paro, why does it say the word Bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh? Lech el Paro mebayle should have said Lech, go to Pharaoh. My boy. So why does it say the word boy? So the Zohar says that when Moses was approaching Pharaoh, now he approached Pharaoh many times, but in this portion, when he's about to approach Pharaoh, he became frightened. Moshe dachal minay. Moshe became very scared. Why? Because he realized that Pharaoh, at this point, Pharaoh embodied the Tanin Hagadol, the great fish. He embodied this great fish. Since Hashem saw that Moses was afraid to encounter the great Tanin, the great fish, because it says on Pharaoh, the verse in Yecheskel, it says, Hatanin Hagadol Harovetz Besochi Arav, that Pharaoh is the Egyptian king is considered the great fish that roams the great waters. So Hashem tells Moses, I will come with you. Bo el Pharaoh, don't go to Pharaoh. Bo, let's come together to Pharaoh. And we'll go together. Or Bo el Pharaoh means come to me and you'll find within me Pharaoh. You'll find Pharaoh within me. What does this really mean? What is the great fish? And what is Pharaoh coming to Pharaoh? So there's another part to this clue. The Zohar also says that the word Pharaoh could also refer to Esperian dechol nehurin, which is like this great source of all lights. Now, redemption. Let's talk about redemption for a moment. The people are in a very constricted place, limited place. They're slaves. And they have to break free from their slavery. And this is what the portions previously are talking about. They're breaking free from the slave. They're gaining a voice. They're believing the possibility of the miraculous. And stage number 3 would be, now you need to receive a new way of being. So I break the old mold, I believe in the possibility of the new mold, and now I have to create for myself the third mold, right? The third reality. These are stages in growth. First, I'm stuck in a certain place, I break that place. I believe in the possibility of creating something else for myself, and then I create the other thing for myself. When I'm creating that stage for myself, in that level, I need to assume new behaviors, new patterns, because the old patterns is broken, and I need to create new patterns for my life. So Moses, who is the embodiment of law, of Torah, is going to give the Torah to the Jewish people eventually when they leave Egypt, which is very consistent with who Moshe is. Moshe is the man of law. So he breaks their old mold, he gives them the possibility for the new, and he's going to give them the new law. Now, God, Hashem, appears to Moses and says, I want one more thing from you before you go out of Egypt. It's not sufficient enough to take the people out of their old mold and bring them to a new. I want you to gain and take the energy and the power of Pharaoh himself. Not just to break away and say, okay, we're leaving a new life, but I want you to take that same raw potential that Pharaoh embodied and bring it and integrate it into a holy context. I'll explain what this means. When they finally reach the sea, and they pass through the sea, and they go to the other side of the sea, and the Egyptians are cast in the sea, there's a passage that keeps on repeating itself twice and says, Sus v'rochbo ramavayam, that the horse and the rider were cast into the sea. And this seems to be a very important image in the Torah, that the horse and the rider. Later on in the book of Chababuk, and later on in the prophet, there's an image of a rider on a horse. And Kabbalistically, one represents a holy image and one represents the opposite of a holy image. There's two ways we can live. One is to live freely, and one is to live restrictively. There is the way a person is as a sus, as a horse, an unrestrained, powerful person that has no rider. And then there is a person that lives a very restrictive way. So there's a sus, there's an aspect of the horse, which is roaming freely, or another image would be the fish, which we'll talk in a moment. And then there's the image of a rider that holds back. What does a rider do? Someone that rides a horse. A person that's riding a horse is really reining in the horse. He holds the horse and pulls it in different directions and makes sure the horse doesn't go to that direction, the other direction. He's really giving direction to the horse. In Kabbalistic terminology, there are two things in our life. There's something that's called hispashtut, which is when a person is expansive and open. You're really feeling good about yourself. You're really in a good place. You're just feeling good, and you're just expressing yourself. And then is when a person feels really restricted and quiet and insular. The way of klipa, which is the opposite of the holy, is that first comes hispashtut. First a person feels really good about himself, and just open and careless. And because they feel careless and they do all these careless actions, eventually that comes to bring a restriction. So you live openly, but the openly actually creates more restrictions in your life. So first you come sus, first you're acting like a wild animal, and then because you're acting wildly with a lack of responsibility, all those things that you do have eventually an effect on you, and then you feel all restricted and you feel really bad. So there's a horse and then there's a rider. That image is the unholy. That image was cast into the sea. Then there's the opposite image. The opposite image is a person riding on a horse, which is, I have control of my life, and I'm a person that takes responsibility for my life, and I know exactly what I have to do at every moment of the day, and yet in that context of responsibility, I also allow myself to be freely. So let's say in terms of a relationship with a man and a woman. An unhealthy relationship is a person that says, I'm all over the place, and a person that, is with many, many different people, many different nights, and then eventually that comes to restrict them, because the person feels bad about themselves. So first they live like a sus, like a horse, unrestrictively, and then that causes a restriction within themselves. Another person would say, I'm going to dedicate my life to this other person, I'm going to marry this person, in a context of something that's holy. I'm going to create a certain context, a boundary, a border within a relationship, and in that relationship I'll live freely. That's a healthy way and a holy way of living. Moses understood these two ideas, and he understood that they have to leave the unholy reality, which is this, with a lack of responsibility, lack of taking accountability for your life, and to live a responsible life. And he understood that, and that's why he's going to give them the Torah, which is responsibility. But Hashem tells him, I want one other thing from you. I want you to recapture, even though you're going to live responsibly, and you're going to live with law, and in the context of law, you're going to have a lot of leeway and freedom. I want you to also create a possibility that a person could have that raw, free energy, even within the context of the holy. I want you to go to Pharaoh and draw down that energy, that unbridled, formless, boundless energy that exists within the consciousness, with the concept of a Pharaoh. And I want you to bring that into the holy. Not only should you teach the people how to live responsibly, and in their responsibility to live openly, but I want you to have moments in their lives that they can live pure freedom. And this is in terms of, let's understand this, and just make it a little bit more clear, in terms of our growth. When you start off as a child, you're basically a fish that's roaming freely. There's no responsibility. You do whatever you want. Then you grow older, you become mature, and you take responsibility very seriously, hopefully. And your parents, and your education tells you have to be a responsible being, and you take responsibility for your action. And a lot of times, you grow older, you become more mature, and as you grow more mature, you grow more sad. And that doesn't have to happen, because you say, I'm responsible, I can't have the same fun that I had as a child, I'm a more responsible being. So in the small level of responsibility, I try to have my measure of joy. The trick of life, not the trick, but a great way of living would be, is not only to be responsible and live maturely, but in the maturity that you receive and the maturity that you acquire when you're mature and a healthy human being, you also have the potential to live like a child at moments, to be in that same pure state of unbridled joy, to receive that, which is called in Kabbalistic language, is called the world of tohu, of chaos, to bring those chaotic, beautiful, just careless moments, even for a few moments in your life, even when you're living fully a responsible life. And this is what Moses has fear. Moses understands freedom. He understands we have to break the new mold and bring them a new mold. But now God is telling him, I want a completely new challenge for you. I want you to go back to Pharaoh and receive that and bring that back to the people of Israel. And that's what the Torah is telling us, that Hashem says, okay, if you can't do it alone, I'm going to help you do this.